At Bethlehem's annual Southside Film Festival, one of the screenings I always seek out and am never disappointed by are the blocks of short films. And one of the screenings everyone was talking about last year included the work of experimental documentary filmmaker Adrienne Finelli and her film, Too Soon, Too Late. This is Musings. I'm Ken Michael. Adrienne Finelli recently completed a Master of Fine Arts degree at the University of Michigan School of Art and Design. Currently, she's a lecturer at the school and is teaching a course that she created called Home, a working seminar that explores broad concepts of home and aims to develop new work across the arts that relates to the psychological, political, and cultural meanings of home. Prior to Michigan, Finelli lived in Philadelphia, where she graduated from Temple University's Film and Media Arts program. Although she's been producing documentaries since early high school, it was during her studies at Temple where she developed her practice and methods for working with personal stories of trauma and loss. Filmmaker Adrienne Finelli.
Even when it just kind of starts up, I think the sound for me is the soundtrack. Even just the music gets my heart rate going up. It definitely has become easier to watch. After a while, you get so used to hearing the voices as voices and listening to the sentences that sometimes you abstract the meaning. I remember the first time that I screened it for a group of people, I got pretty emotional.
Talk a little bit about exactly what this is for people that don't know.
Sure, yeah. This was my thesis film for my MFA at the University of Michigan. I started working with people around stories of trauma and loss, and then started working with families within that. And I thought for my thesis, I want to work with my own family, because there's this big thing that nobody wants to talk about. And I didn't know my grandmother at all. I was only a little over a year old at the time of her death. Essentially, this is a piece about loss of someone I never really knew, but for my dad and his 5 siblings, it's loss of their mother. She killed herself a couple days before Christmas in 1983. It was different than the usual holiday catch-up that you would have with your relatives. It took a whole month of my life and went and made sure I was sitting down with each one of them. I tried to make it to everyone's home because I wanted it to be on their turf. And it was like really weird. For the first time in my life, I was like, oh, I'm talking to my aunts and uncles as adults about something that we've never talked about before.
What was it like for them? Did they talk a lot about this?
I think they really wanted to talk about it, and everyone agreed. This was a project where if someone didn't want to do it, I don't know that I would have actually made the piece at all. If 3 of the 6 children said, you know what, this is too much, I don't want to do it, I don't know that I would have done it. I went to their houses. I scanned in all these old photographs. The letters are there from my Aunt Mary, who is the eldest of the girls. She was living out of state at the time, and I think had a lot of extra guilt because of that, not being close to home when this tragic event happened. And, I thanked her to have those letters. I mean, her mother was writing her every week, maybe even more. And for me, that was the voice of my grandmother I never heard. And I decided to incorporate those in the film to give my grandmother a voice within the project, too. And sometimes what you're seeing on screen in the letters is contradicting the voices of the children. I think death and loss and all of these things are just much more complicated. Marriage, relationships in general are so complicated. It's really about that. I was playing with the family dynamics. I mean, I don't know that I actually told my relatives this, but, I sort of was playing with the dynamics within the family, too. There's certain things that I wanted the women to say. There were certain things that I wanted the men to say, because it was different for them to sit down and talk with me. As far as I can trace my memory, I don't remember them ever sitting in a room talking about their mother. And what was really interesting that came out of this was they started talking about their mother's death, but it was Adrienne's project. And so they were calling each other like, what did you say for Adrienne's project? And so it's kind of lead me to believe that people should turn their, families should turn their traumas and griefs into projects so that they can talk about them.
Is the handwriting that's actually in the film her letters that you scanned in?
It was very important to me. I could have had it typed and scrolling across or something like that, but it was very important to me to have, there's sort of a homemade quality about the film. I'm using a lot of these old home movies, typed images. There's something old about it, and I thought that the look of handwriting made sense, but then to have it be her handwriting was even more important. And I scanned in all of these letters. There were like 500 pages of letters, and I scanned them all in, and even with the audio clips, I edited it down I had over 16 hours of tape, to cut down into 12 minutes, and in that 12 minutes, it was important for me to have enough space that wasn't voices, because I think this is a piece that needs a lot of room to just kind of think, and you need that break in the voices because it's, even at this point, I feel like I'm pushing, it's like an overload of information, it's an overload of emotion, and for me to have those pauses where there's nothing is very important.
Documentary filmmaker Adrienne Finelli. For information about her work, her website is adriennefinelli.com. Musings is supported by the Dorothy and Dexter Baker Foundation. This is Musings. I'm Ken Michael, and you're tuned to WDIY, Lehigh Valley Community Public Radio.